Hello, friends. Today we will uncover the chilling truth behind Eldridge, a town shrouded in silence and shadows. This is the story of Elias Marlowe, a man who dared to explore a graveyard that locals warn against. What lies beneath the earth is something far darker than mere bones. Watch closely. The mist hung heavy over the small town of Eldridge as Elias Marlowe stepped out of his car, its tires crunching on the gravel of the narrow road. He pulled his coat tighter against the chill, the air thick with an unsettling silence that seemed to swallow the very sound of his breath. Shadows twisted among the skeletal trees lining the path, their gnarled branches clawing at the dim sky, and he felt an involuntary shiver race down his spine. Curious but cautious, he was determined to uncover the truth behind the town's eerie reputation. Yet a gnawing unease settled in the pit of his stomach like a stone. As he ambled down the main street, Elias couldn't shake the whispers he'd caught in the gas station earlier. Fragments of conversation that danced around a night ritual at the ancient graveyard. The words wrapped around his mind like thick fog, growing denser with every passing moment. He approached the local diner, its neon sign flickering in the encroaching dusk, where a group of townspeople sat hunched over steaming mugs, their faces obscured in shadows. Their hushed tones faded as he entered, replaced by a wary silence that weighed heavily upon him. "New in town?" an elderly woman asked, her voice creaking like the floorboards beneath him. She had silver hair and eyes that glittered with knowing, as if she held stories older than the town itself. "Just passing through," he replied, the practiced smile faltering slightly at the corners. "I've heard some interesting things about the graveyard." A collective tension rippled through the diner, a defensive barrier rising as if the very mention had awoken something unsettling. Best to steer clear of that place after dark, another patron muttered, his eyes darting to the window as though he feared unseen watchers lurking outside. Elias's skepticism flared. Why? Just a graveyard, isn't it? What's so special about it? The woman leaned forward, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "It's not just graves, dear. There's a ritual that takes place, a way for the town to remember, to confront what lies beneath." "What lies beneath?" he pressed, intrigued despite his better judgment. The elderly woman's gaze hardened, her lips drawn into a thin line. "Fear isn't something to poke at. Best to leave it buried." Elias felt the weight of her words, a chill that cut deeper than the cold air outside. He glanced at the window, where the mist began to creep like fingers across the pane, shrouding the world in a thick veil. Shadows danced just beyond the glass, and he had to remind himself that they were just shadows, mere illusions crafted by the twilight. "What do you know about it?" he asked, his curiosity edging towards obsession. "Only that the silent figures emerge," she murmured, almost to herself. "They come when the night is at its darkest, and they remind us of what we fear most. But they're not here to harm. They reflect what we refuse to acknowledge." Elias's heart quickened. There it was, the thread of mystery he had sought to unravel. Yet his logical mind recoiled at the implications. Were these merely tales spun to keep outsiders at bay? Or was there a truth in the fear that gripped the townsfolk, a hidden depth to their collective grief? A silence fell over the diner, thickening the air until it felt suffocating. The crowd resumed their muted conversations, but Elias felt their glances linger on him, measuring and weighing his intentions. As he stepped back outside, the mist had deepened, swirling around him like a living entity, and he caught a glimpse of the ancient graveyard in the distance. Its gravestones jutted from the ground like teeth, sharp and forbidding against the twilight sky. What secrets lay within that hallowed ground? What mysteries did the night hold, waiting to be unveiled? Elias took a breath, steeling himself against the rising tide of dread and curiosity. He felt the pull of the unknown drawing him closer, yet a voice whispering in the recesses of his mind warned him to turn back. But he was a historian. The truth beckoned, and he would not shy away from its shadows. The night, with all its fears and questions, awaited him. Elias Marlowe stood at the edge of the ancient graveyard, its weathered stones looming like silent sentinels in the gathering dusk. The mist curled around them, thick and persistent, blurring the line between the living and the dead. It was a place steeped in whispered legends, where the very air seemed charged with the weight of unspoken fears. He shivered, not from the chill in the air, but from the gnawing uncertainty that accompanied him like a shadow. "Ah, you've found your way here, young historian." The voice was a soft, melodic lilt that cut through the eerie silence. He turned to see Mara Whitlock, her silver hair cascading like a veil around her shoulders, eyes sparkling with ancient wisdom and an unsettling warmth. There was something ethereal about her, a quality that made the world around them feel both larger and smaller at once. "I've heard stories," Elias replied, forcing a steadiness into his voice. "About the rituals, the silent figures." He hadn't meant to sound so skeptical, but the words came out edged with disbelief. He was a man of reason, after all, a custodian of history, not of haunting tales. Mara stepped closer, her presence a mix of comfort and foreboding. "Stories are all we have, Elias. They bind us to the past, to our fears and our losses. They are the threads that weave the fabric of our community." Her gaze bore into him, as if she could see the walls he had constructed, all too rational and solid. But what if these stories are just that, stories? He felt the tension rise between them, a charged silence that spoke louder than any words. What if they are nothing more than myths to keep us in line, to keep us from facing the truth? Truth? Her laugh was like the chime of distant bells, both beautiful and haunting. What is truth in a place where the boundaries between life and death blur? You seek the rationale, but some mysteries defy explanation. He shifted his weight, the fog swirling around his ankles as if urging him to step deeper into the unknown. "You're saying I should just accept what I cannot understand?" The skepticism in his voice felt brittle, ready to shatter under the weight of her gaze. Mara's expression softened, and for a moment, he saw the weight of collective grief that hung around her like a shroud. To understand is not always to rationalize, Elias. The ritual is not merely an act. It is a communion with our fears, a way to confront the darkness that dwells within us. The silent figures. She paused, her eyes darkening with an unspoken dread. They are manifestations of what we refuse to acknowledge. His heart quickened at the mention of the silent figures, those ghostly apparitions that loomed in the corners of his mind. He had always dismissed them, rationalized them as tricks of the light or echoes of his imagination. But standing in front of Mara, he felt the tug of curiosity intertwining with the tendrils of fear. "Do you participate in this ritual?" The question slipped from his lips before he could catch it, laced with an involuntary tremor. "Participation is a choice," Mara said, her voice a gentle caress. "But know this. To stand on the fringes is to remain a spectator to your own fears. Each night, the town comes together, confronting the echoes of what we have lost. You're invited to join, if you dare." His pulse quickened, an unsteady rhythm that echoed the distant rustling of leaves. A thought, slippery and insistent, began to weave its way through his mind. Was he ready to face what lay beneath the surface of his skepticism? Could he truly risk everything he believed in for the sake of understanding the ritual? As the mist thickened, wrapping around them like an embrace, Elias felt the weight of her words settle deep within him. He looked into the depths of Mara's eyes, searching for clarity, but finding only shadows dancing just out of reach. What lay beyond the veil of the known? Would the night reveal the truths he so desperately sought? Or would it unravel him in ways he could scarcely comprehend? The question hung in the chilly air, heavy and unyielding, as the first whispers of the night began to stir, a prelude to the ritual that beckoned him closer. The sun dipped low behind a curtain of trees, casting long shadows that stretched across the cracked pavement of the town square where Elias Marlowe waited. The air was thick with an unsettling silence, broken only by the distant rustle of leaves and the faint whisper of ghosts that lingered in the corners of his mind. He spotted Jonas Grieve approaching, his familiar silhouette framed by the mist that had begun to creep in, an omen of the night's impending ritual. "Hey, Elias," Jonas called, his voice betraying a hint of reluctance. The skepticism in his eyes was as palpable as the growing fog, and Elias felt a twinge of unease at the sight of his childhood friend. But it's all nonsense, an escape from reality. Elias's heart quickened at the fervent dismissal. But what if it's more than that? What if it touches on something real? Something we can't fully understand? He felt the words slipping out before he could suppress them, the question lingering heavily in the air between them. Jonas's eyes narrowed, and the silence stretched, thick and charged. "You really think that? You really think this ritual is some sort of connection to the dead?" The scorn dripped off his words like rainwater from drooping eaves. Yet beneath the surface, Elias sensed fear, an undercurrent that threatened to drag them both under. The mist swirled around them, enveloping the square in a spectral embrace. And for a moment, Elias felt as though they stood at the edge of a precipice, peering into something vast and unknowable. "It's not just about the dead, Jonas. It's about us, our memories, our grief." His voice softened, urging Jonas to see beyond the veil of skepticism. Jonas looked away, the tension in his jaw tightening. "Grief? You think this town is grieving? What do you know about grief?" The challenge was sharp, cutting through the remnants of their childhood camaraderie. Elias could feel the weight of unshared burdens pressing down on both of them. "I know it haunts us, shapes us," he replied, a quiet intensity in his tone. "This ritual, it's a way to confront it, to remember." Jonas's silence spoke volumes, steeped in an unspoken history. The shadows deepened around them, and Elias wondered if they were slipping into a realm where rationality held no sway. Was it possible that Jonas, the ever-logical skeptic, was wrestling with his own ghosts? The thought lingered, heavy with implications. "Maybe you're right," Jonas finally murmured, almost to himself. "But what if it's just a way to hide from the truth? What if facing our fears just makes them more terrifying?" His voice cracked, revealing a fracture in his facade, and Elias felt the ground beneath them shift. "I don't think facing fear diminishes its power," Elias said, stepping closer despite the growing chill. "It can bind us, our shared struggles, our memories. It's what makes us human." The silence that followed was thick with unsaid words, the air heavy with the weight of their fears. Elias glanced at Jonas, searching for a sign of connection. but found only the silence of his friend, a wall built high by unacknowledged grief. And as the mist thickened around them, Elias couldn't shake the question that hung in the air. How do personal fears and losses shape our understanding of the ritual and our relationship with the unknown? The answer remained elusive, lost in the fog that swirled just beyond their grasp. The moon hung low, a pale eye watching over the ancient graveyard, its silver light filtering through dense tendrils of mist that coiled around the weathered headstones. Elias Marlowe stood at the edge of the graveyard, heart pounding, caught between the rationality that had always anchored him and the eerie ripples of the night. He had come seeking truth, yet found himself engulfed in an atmosphere weighted with history and shadow. The air felt electric, charged with an unspoken anticipation. As he gazed into the thickening fog, the world around him dimmed, sound fading into a whisper, leaving only the rustle of the wind through the gnarled branches above. Shadows danced at the periphery of his vision, shifting with a mind of their own. Curiosity gnawed at him, but a wariness clutched at his chest, tightening its grip with each passing moment. Then, as if drawn from the very essence of the night, they emerged. The silent figures, wisps of fog solidified into indistinct forms, swaying gently, their presence both alluring and repulsive. They drifted in and out of focus, faces obscured, limbs almost fleeting. No sound accompanied them, but their arrival was a declaration, a haunting reminder of the collective grief that bound the town together. Elias held his breath, caught in a moment that felt both forbidden and inevitable. This was the ritual he had long sought to understand, yet now, standing witness, he felt the foundation of his skepticism tremble beneath him. What were these figures? Merely figments of collective imagination, or something far more real? Manifestations of the town's unresolved sorrows? His mind raced with questions, each more disorienting than the last. Could he remain an observer, untouched by the pulsing heart of this mystery? Or was he destined to confront the shadows lurking within himself? He felt the air grow heavier, infused with a sense of shared melancholy that transcended the boundaries of life and death. It was an emotional weight that pressed against his chest, breaching the dam he had built with logic and reason. The silent figures glided closer, their stillness contrasting with the tumult within him. They were not to be interacted with, only witnessed. Yet he felt an inexplicable pull, a silent invitation to acknowledge the pain that lingered in the air. Elias's thoughts spiraled into chaos, and he stumbled back a step, a reflexive gesture against the encroaching tide of the unknown. He could no longer deny the truth that resonated beneath his skepticism. The collective grief of the town was alive, breathing, manifesting before him in forms he could neither explain nor comprehend. The fear that had been simmering inside him bubbled to the surface. It was no longer about the existence of the supernatural, but about the darkness within his own heart. As he stood frozen, the mists thickened, swirling around him, blurring the lines between the living and the dead. He was no longer just Elias Marlowe, the cautious historian. He was a man grappling with the tether of mortality, the weight of memories, his own and those of the community. The figures danced, a silent choreography of grief, urging him to confront the fears he had long buried beneath layers of rationality. Elias's breath quickened, and with it came the realization that the night held answers to questions he had not yet dared to ask. Could he find the strength to embrace the unknown? Or would he retreat into the shadows of his own making, allowing the truth to slip away like mist through his fingers? The silent figures continued their haunting dance, and in their presence, the question lingered. a weighty silence that expanded into the night. What does it mean to confront the mysteries of existence when fear threatens to consume you whole? Elias Marlowe stood at the edge of the town square, the mist curling around him like the hesitant fingers of memory. Shadows danced in the dim light of the flickering street lamps, and he could hear the whispers of the past lurking just beneath the surface of everyday life. Each evening brought with it an invitation to the ritual, a call he had yet to fully embrace. Today, he set out to uncover the stories that fed the collective grief of this community, a tapestry woven from loss and longing. But every step felt heavy with unspoken truths. He approached the first resident, an elderly woman named Agnes, her hands weathered like the gravestones at the edge of the town. As he inquired about the ritual, her gaze turned distant, as if the weight of her memories transported her elsewhere. "You see," she began, her voice trembling yet steady, "we gather not just to honor the dead, but to remember what binds us to them." Her eyes glistened with unshed tears, and Elias could sense the chasm between her pain and his rational skepticism. "Is it fear that drives you?" he asked, curiosity lacing his tone, though he felt the familiar prickle of doubt at the back of his mind. "Or is it something else?" Agnes glanced down at the ground, her voice softening. "Fear is a part of it, yes. But it's more about understanding. Understanding what we've lost, what we still hold dear." The weight of her words clung to the air, a reminder that each spirit bore a story, a piece of their collective memory. Elias felt a flicker of empathy, a crack in his carefully constructed wall of logic. As he moved through the town, each encounter mirrored the last, revealing the layers of grief intertwined with the ritual. He spoke with Marla, a middle-aged woman whose laughter once filled the square, now replaced by a haunting silence. "The night of the ritual," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I can feel him with me. My son. It's the only time I feel his presence, lingering like the mist." Elias's heart ached at the rawness of her confession. He had come seeking facts, seeking evidence to support his skepticism, but he found himself drawn into the web of shared sorrow. Here the town's grief was palpable, a living entity that wrapped around him, urging him to confront his own fears of loss and the fragility of life. The line between observer and participant blurred, and with every shared story, he felt the grip of reason loosening. His final conversation of the day was with Mara Whitlock, the town's keeper of lore, who had always welcomed him with a knowing smile. She sat on the porch, the shadows cloaking her figure as she spoke of the ritual with a reverence that unsettled him. "Elias, each person who participates carries the weight of their memories. It's not just about the dead. It's about what we refuse to forget." "But isn't it easier to forget? To let go?" he countered, though he felt the tremor in his voice. Mara turned to him, her eyes reflecting the depth of her wisdom. "And what would we lose in the forgetting? Our connections? Our stories? The pain binds us, but so does the love that preceded it." Elias stood silent, the air thick with the fragrance of damp earth and the heaviness of collective sorrow. The weight of their grief, once a painful burden, now felt like a fragile thread, connecting him to the community in ways he had never anticipated. He was an outsider, yet he was drawn in, straddling the line between understanding and fear. As night began to fall, the mist thickened, swirling around him in an intimate embrace. The question hung in the air, unspoken yet insistent. How do these personal stories of loss deepen the meaning of the ritual? And what does true acceptance of collective memory mean for Elias? The boundaries of his skepticism began to blur, revealing the intricate dance between life and death. binding the community in an unbreakable bond. The mist hung thick in the air, curling around the gnarled branches of the ancient trees that flanked the graveyard. Elias and Jonas stood side by side, their breath forming soft clouds that dissipated into the night. The distant echo of whispering voices seemed to weave through the silence, a reminder of the ritual that loomed ahead. Elias felt a familiar skepticism simmering within him. But tonight was different. The air was charged with an unspoken tension, one that made the back of his neck prickle. "Elias," Jonas finally spoke, his voice low, almost swallowed by the mist. "There's something I need to tell you." Elias turned to his friend, sensing the gravity in Jonas's tone. The laughter of their childhood felt a world away as he studied the way Jonas's brow knit with worry. "What is it?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady, though his heart raced with anticipation and concern. Jonas's gaze drifted towards the shadows, the glimmer of something unnameable flickering in his eyes. "It's about my sister, Sophie." He hesitated, swallowing hard, the words seeming to choke him. "She was taken by this place, right around the time of the ritual last year." Elias's skepticism wavered, a crack appearing in the armor of rationality he had clung to. "Taken? What do you mean?" Jonas inhaled deeply, as if bracing against a wave of hopelessness. "She was drawn to it, like everyone else, participated in the ritual, but she never came back. I thought she was just lost in the fog, lost in the ritual's pull, but..." His voice cracked, and he fell silent, the weight of grief palpable between them. The silence deepened, heavy and laden with unspoken fears. Elias felt his heart ache for Jonas, a pang of empathy cutting through his own doubts. "I didn't know," he murmured. "I'm so sorry." "Sorry won't bring her back," Jonas replied bitterly, anger flaring momentarily in his eyes. "I've spent every night since, wondering if she's out there, somewhere in the mist, or if she's just gone." His voice softened, revealing vulnerability. "The others say it's just a ritual, that she's part of the cycle now. But I can't accept that." Elias felt the ground shift beneath him, the firm foundation of reason crumbling. The ritual, which he had viewed through a lens of skepticism, suddenly took on a new weight. A collective grief wrapped around Jonas like a shroud. "You truly believe," he began, grappling with the implications, "that this magical belief could actually..." "It's not magic, Elias," Jonas interrupted, his voice rising. "It's pain. It's fear. It's what connects us to those we've lost. I can't let fear of the unknown take hold of me, not when I've already lost so much." Elias stood rooted, the fog swirling around them like a living entity, creeping closer with every passing moment. The silent figures, those harbingers of grief he'd dismissed, now echoed Jonas's despair, merging reality with a haunting reminder of loss. "Jonas." Elias felt the walls of his skepticism beginning to crack. "What if the ritual has more to do with remembering than with forgetting? What if it's a way to confront those we've lost rather than abandon them?" Jonas locked eyes with him, and in that moment, Elias saw the depth of his friend's sorrow reflected back at him, a mirror of the collective fears that had taken root in the town. The air thickened with unvoiced questions, the mist swirling closer as if eavesdropping on their exchange. "Can you really accept that?" Jonas challenged, his voice low but steady, as if daring Elias to confront his own fears. Elias felt an unsettling churning within him, a growing understanding that perhaps the ritual, the silent figures, and his own doubts were intricately woven together in a tapestry of shared grief. But the question lingered like the mist itself. How could he reconcile his skeptical mind with the emotional truths laid bare before him? As the whispers in the air grew louder, Elias turned his gaze back to the graveyard, the shadows merging and shifting against the pale glow of the moon. The boundaries between reality and the supernatural blurred, and he was left standing on the cusp, caught between the known and the unknown, the living and the dead, wondering if he was ready to cross that threshold. Elias stood at the edge of the ancient graveyard, the mist swirling around him like a shroud, obscuring the world beyond. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves, each breath a reminder of the fragile boundary between life and death. He wrapped his arms around himself, as if to ward off the chill that penetrated deeper than skin, reaching into the recesses of his mind where doubt festered. In the fading light, the headstones loomed like silent sentinels, their inscriptions worn and faded, secrets buried beneath layers of moss and time. Elias felt a tremor of unease, a whisper of the past that tugged at the edges of his reason. He paced slowly, the soft crunch of gravel beneath his feet punctuating the overwhelming silence. The weight of his skepticism pressed down on him like an anchor. Yet, in this eerie stillness, the stories he had meticulously gathered began to unravel, fraying like the threads of an old tapestry. "What do I really know?" he muttered to himself, each word hanging in the damp air. His mind flickered back to the tales told by Mara, the keeper of lore, and the hushed warnings about the night's ritual. Rationality had been his shield. Yet here, amidst the tombstones, it felt like a flimsy barrier against the encroaching shadows. The collective grief of the town whispered through the mist, swirling around him like a living thing, pressing against his chest, suffocating in its intimacy. He closed his eyes, allowing the memories of the townsfolk's stories to wash over him. Loss woven into every narrative, fear etched into their faces as they spoke of the silent figures. Elias had always dismissed such notions as mere superstition, artifacts of a community clinging to its past. But now, with each cautious step, he felt the ground shift beneath him, as if the very earth was alive with the weight of forgotten sorrows. His heart raced, a primal instinct battling the encroaching fog of doubt. How could he reconcile the scientific explanations that had guided his life with the inexplicable emotions clawing at his consciousness? The boundaries between reason and fear blurred, twisting into a knot that tightened with each breath. He could hear his own pulse in the silence, a reminder of his vulnerability. And suddenly, he was unsure. Was it madness to believe in something beyond the tangible? The mist thickened, wrapping around him like an embrace, and for a moment, he felt a chill that was not entirely of this world. Shadows danced at the periphery of his vision, flickers of movement that threatened to draw him deeper into despair. Elias opened his eyes, scanning the graveyard, desperately seeking the rationale amidst the irrational. But all he found was the oppressive silence, the weight of memory hanging like a heavy fog. What was it that tied him to this place? Was it merely curiosity? Or was there something more profound lurking just beyond the veil of his understanding? He had spent his life unraveling the threads of history, seeking clarity in the chaos of time. Yet here he stood, entangled in the very fabric of human emotion, fear, grief, and a deep-seated yearning to comprehend the unknown. As he took another step into the mist, a shiver ran down his spine. The silent figures began to emerge, ethereal silhouettes gliding through the mist, their presence a chilling reminder of what had been lost. With every whispered name, every flicker of a lantern, Elias felt the boundaries of his understanding blur. Here, amidst the shadows, he was not merely an observer. He was part of a larger tapestry, woven through grief and memory. The question hung heavy in the air. How could he reconcile this duality of life and death? The truth was not in the answers he sought through logic, but in the acceptance of fear, the vulnerability that came with acknowledging the reality of loss. Elias closed his eyes, letting the chant reverberate through him, allowing the pain and the beauty to intertwine. Each note a binding thread that stitched him closer to the community around him. When he opened his eyes again, something had shifted. The mist sparkled with an otherworldly glow, and the silent figures stood closer now, their presence no longer threatening but illuminating. In that moment, he felt an overwhelming sense of unity wash over him, a deep, abiding connection to the townsfolk, to the memories they shared, to the very essence of life and death that swirled around them. Elias stepped forward into the circle, extending his hand towards Mara and then to Jonas, his heart swelling with newfound understanding. They were all bound by this intricate dance of grief, a rhythm that pulsed through the night air. The ritual was not merely about fear. It was about acceptance, about embracing the interconnectedness of their lives. As they joined hands, the mist enveloped them, each breath taken in unison, each heartbeat echoing the rhythm of the night. A calmness settled within Elias, a profound acceptance that transcended the fear he had clung to for so long. The boundaries between him and the shadows faded, revealing a truth he had long resisted. In the silence that followed the ritual, he understood. It was not about eradicating fear, but about embracing it, allowing it to guide him toward deeper connections and a profound sense of belonging. The moon above illuminated their gathered forms, casting long shadows across the graveyard, a reminder that living and dying were but two sides of the same coin, woven together in the sacred fabric of existence. And as Elias breathed in the cool night air, the question lingered, beautifully unresolved. How could he reconcile the duality of his existence, finding peace in the acceptance of both fear and love?